the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. First up on the agenda is approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we have a discussion of his approach with Nemont Communications about an application to provide broadband to the Clark area. They need a governmental agency to be to sign on with them. Do we have anyone from Nemont in the audience? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I got that in my pocket and it's not blindsided.
Well, yeah, I know they want us to sign on. They're after art money, and I'm trying to pull up those emails. I just assumed that someone from Nemont, I spoke with Mr. Hood, and Lloyd, you want to give us the background?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was a little blindsided myself simply because when we made aware of the ARPS money and some of it being more or less set aside for broadband, because Nemont is our server out there, and I happened to break one of their lines. I caught the guy in the serviceman, and he spoke to his supervisor, which is they're based out of Morton, Montana. They're a Montana service that crosses over and serves the telephone basically and internet service for the Clark area. If they're about that same time, I'm kind of rambling here, but Jeremiah sent an invite for a webinar that was specific to broadband expansion within. I don't know if anybody attended that webinar, but I did email Jeremiah, who's with the WCCA, Wyoming County Commissioner Association, and asked if that was open to all providers or just elected officials. And he said open to all advisors, all providers, and to forward that as much as to any. That's where I went, and I think we were looking at two different issues. The person I've been talking to is Troy, and I see Richard Hood is now with me.
Let's just go with Richard real quick. Yeah, Richard, you want to give us a rundown of what you're after, if you would, please? And you are on mute right now. Your microphone is muted, Richard. There you go.
All right. Good morning.
Can you give us a brief rundown of what you guys are after?
Well, you know, when the NTIA first announced this, we, of course, were very interested in the funding. And subsequent to when I sent the letter off to you requesting consideration for a partnership, we've come to the conclusion that there's just so many unanswered questions surrounding the funding and how it's to be set up. And we've never had a partnership with Park County in the past, so no template to work off from. We've kind of at our last board meeting came to the conclusion that it's really not a doable thing in the time frame. So that's where we're sitting right now. What were your thoughts?
Well, we're kind of leaning towards what you're thinking. If you don't feel it's doable in this time frame, I guess it's not doable. But
Look, Mr. Chairman, Richard, Commissioner Lloyd Keel, I believe we're looking at what you started is a different issue than what I started a couple of weeks ago. Have you, and I apologize, I don't know the last name of Nemont project manager, I believe this is his title, with the name of Troy. Have you been in contact with him? Because I believe what your original request did not involve ARPS, American Rescue Plan.
And that's Troy Unrun from the Billings area, right?
Troy, yes, he's from Morton.
Yeah, Troy and I talk, 2, 3, 4 times a week. So
is this current request that we have on the agenda today in regards to ARPS money or something else?
Okay. And I'm having a little bit hard time understanding what you're saying all the time, but on the agenda today was strictly the NTIA funding where the state agency needed to take the lead on that. So, but what we had and was thinking of when we first heard about the funding was a pretty big fiber build job in the Clark area. So I don't know what your thoughts were as far as the scope of work on a project or anything, but that's what we had in mind when we first heard about the funding, because we're actively pursuing trying to bring fiber to everybody we possibly can. So that's where, in order to get the application together, you need to have the, at least I'll call it a high level design in place that you can do the estimates off from. And that high level design, me and an engineer actually went down and drove around the Clark area several weeks ago and got a start on that, but then we were subsequently stopped from doing that. But it's so when you look at the time frame that would have left to work with Park County in getting the project defined, the funding or the estimates together, and the funding requests and the application together, it's we don't have enough time to do that from a NEMOT perspective in the high level design that we would have to do. So that's what we had in mind. I don't know where your thoughts are.
Richard, this is Scott Mangold. As far as the FCC even reserving places such as the Clark area, if TCT says that that's their area and you come into their area, is that going to be a problem? Or is there such a thing that the FCC will allow them to say that, well, this is our area?
It's potentially a problem. I don't know. It's obviously it's our service territory as defined by the FCC, and we're the carrier of last resort in that area. But the way that the NTIA funding has been put together, yeah, and that's a concern of ours. We don't understand exactly why our government has decided to do it this way. We feel we have a somewhat of an understanding, but yeah, we're the carrier of last resort for Clark. We have certain responsibilities for that area. We've been doing our best, and but they've made it very, very difficult in this application process to realistically pursue the funding.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we're looking at two different things here. This one has nothing to do with, I will follow up with Troy because the deadline don't coincide. I mean, we all know that we just have to have it allocated by the December 2024. So I believe there may still be some possible broadband use out there, but this is obviously something different. And if they don't have time.
It is different. Yeah, it's a different pot of money. And when I apologize to Richard. When we got this request, we saw that the application deadline was August 17th. I put it in front of our county attorney to have him look at it. And so we were going to discuss it on July 6th, and we didn't realize that just because the application deadline was August 16th, how much time you needed to prepare the application.
Right.
And so I guess where I'm at is if you see it as insurmountable to get the application in there, this is a moot point as far as this discussion goes. I mean, we'd like to make sure we want to do what we can to improve, the broadband everywhere we can, but it might seem like the window for this one is too tight to make it work.
Well, that's our conclusion is, of course, we've successfully put in applications for under Reconnect and back in 2009 under the stimulus. So we're fairly familiar, and this NTIA is using a very, very similar process. But the stumbling block is always, as a company, we would have to commit the resources and the money to go out and do I'm going to call it high level design. It's enough to get an estimate together. And I like to use the term a rough order of magnitude estimate. And I let my management know that what that means is the estimate that we come up with out of high level design is plus 60 minus 25% at the end of the day. So if you're comfortable in pursuing and going forward with that understanding, so let's say you come in with an estimate of $1 million, what you're really saying is at the end of the day, when we get the detailed design, that might be 1.6 million. So the company has to accept that risk. And the county would, you know, as partners, we would need to accept that risk in total. So it does take some time and effort to get as much accuracy into that high level design as possible. And it, you know, so the other thing that came to in our discussions was a big question, and you've seen it in all the webinars, ownership at the end of the day. So if we're going to put fiber to the premise in Clark, Wyoming, at the end of the day, of course, Nemont would want to own the assets to it. And I don't know how that would meld into your thoughts and your planning.
Brian, you go ahead and sit up here if you would real quick.
I'm
I just
sorry,
want-
what was that?
Oh, I was talking to our county attorney, just stepped in
Okay,
for his thoughts on that contract. Sounds like we might not be moving forward with it. The window might be too tight, but just have your thoughts if you had any on the contract itself.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, when I initially looked at the contract, there were, I think, some issues in there and not knowing where the commission was going with this. I haven't gone much further. So,
Well, unfortunately, it looks like possibly the window's closing, so I think the discussion's probably, again, at this time is the point.
I would agree.
And Mr. Chairman, I just want to let Richard know that there may be possibilities of others in the future funding available for broadband through a different source. Still federal, but filtered through the county.
okay, I just caught parts of that. So you're talking about subsequent rounds of funding?
Well, what we're hearing is that there is going to be a recovery, American recovery money possibly available for expanding broadband, and that's an avenue that I believe Commissioner Teal has been pursuing with Troy from Nemont.
Okay,
So, like I say, unfortunately, it looks like the window's too tight for us to move forward with this one. And if it turns out that there's an extension of the deadline, anything like that, please circle back with us.
that sounds good.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, is that it then?
It is.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Okay, moving right along, we got Powell Valley Healthcare EMS and Cody Regional EMS. We have Tom Fitzsimmons. And remind me your first name, sorry. Scott. Rangel here to
Thank you.
request some funding.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Livingston, fellow commissioners. The good news of this story is you're talking to two EMS services that represents the entire Park County area. The other good news is, unlike other counties within the state, both our services are hospital-based services that are well-run and won't be coming to you in the future saying that we aren't able to continue our services, which is unfortunately some of the troubles that Fremont County, Sweetwater County, and Johnson County, Weston County have been suffering. So I want you to know in the state of counties in Wyoming, Park County is in very good shape for EMS coverage. Having said that, we have been challenged greatly by the COVID pandemic, as you can well imagine. And there's really two key areas where we've been challenged. One is just the needed space required to have our trucks prepared and decontaminated before and after every call. Unfortunately, most of our calls, we have to make the assumption that the patient we're about to encounter is potentially COVID positive. And with that, it brings on additional expense in terms of personal protective equipment, but as well as preparation of the equipment itself. That takes our trucks out of service for a longer period of time. In addition to that, we're seeing more and more transports up to buildings for pulmonologists and more critical care on these patients, and not all of them are always COVID. Having said that, we have noticed a significant increase in population that requires our services. I shared our presentation with you ahead of time, and what I'm hoping to do is just really get through the general topics of this paper and then really turn it to the commission for any questions that you might have. But I will say, Park County in general has had a 4.2% annual growth over the last 5 years. Much of that data is pre-pandemic data. Once we start to see migration of people open up, we actually see more people coming into the county that are requiring our services. In addition to that, the Department of Labor Statistics indicates that there's a 6.2% increase required for EMS just because of the aging of the baby boomers. So not only do we have a 6.2 increase in growth and demand for EMS services in Park County, it's compounded by the fact that we have baby boomers moving into the county. I don't know those statistics. It's all, based on analog and what we see running up and down the road, but it's also people that we're meeting on a day-to-day basis. So today we have Scott Bagnell. He's the EMS director for Powell Valley Healthcare. Also with us is June Minchow. She's the ER director at Powell Valley. I'm Tom Fitzsimmons. I'm a paramedic at Cody Regional Health. We are asking for $750,000 in American Rescue Plan funds. And in that, what we hope to accomplish is to be able to provide a much needed space for Powell Valley Healthcare to house their ambulances, but also to have decontamination space as well as a drive-through bay for testing and vaccinations of either COVID or whatever that next pandemic may be. Currently, Powell Valley Healthcare has space for 2 ambulances stored indoors, and the remainder of their fleet is outside, plugged in, and they're truly not ready. And this is long in coming, but having experienced the COVID pandemic, we now recognize the need for space that needs to be inside. In addition to that, both services are requiring 1 additional Type 1 ambulance, which is a critical care transport ambulance available to take our patients up to billing should we need that. We do have latest estimates and quotes for all of this expenditure and this investment, and we're happy to go into the details of that. And with that, I will say I tried to give some backup statistics, a few things that I just like you to point on. Slide number 4, you can see the growth rate over the last 4 years. Obviously, Cody has more seasonality with that, and that's why you see those spikes. With that seasonality, we're seeing an older population of patients that come into our service.
And paramedics.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I resemble that remark, Chairman. Slide 5 is the stat that I got from Department of Labor Statistics, and that says, indeed, with the baby boomers aging, independent of any movement or migration of people, we should expect to see a 6% annual growth rate over the next 10 years in our needs. So that 6% plus that 4.2% organic growth that we have would suggest that there's going to be a 10% growth of need within the county over the next 10 years, and that's annualized. Our fleet is an aged fleet. All of them are diesel trucks. Powell Valley's average mileage 145, ours is 128. These trucks are maintained in the best shape that we can maintain them, but it's hard to keep a 140,000 mile truck in great shape when you've got 6 different drivers of the same truck each day, and that's what happens. Last night, just as an example, at 11:30 last night, Cody Regional Health had 4 ambulances on the road, 3 of them between here and Billings, and 1 on a 911 call. That left 1 ambulance that wasn't capable for ALS services and 1 ambulance that was in the bay should another 911 call. In the summertime, around midnight, it's not uncommon for us to have that kind of demand on our trucks, in particular when we get called to the park. And so the reliability of the equipment for both Powell Valley and Cody Regional Health is imperative. And right now, Powell Valley is suffering. They've got one truck, the 158,000 mile truck that's got a warped block. And so Scott's having to deal with changing out the head gaskets twice now. We've got two trucks that are suffering from electrical problems and the gremlins, to be quite honest with you. And when we have those trucks out of service, they're usually out of service for almost 5 days for a full week. So that's the challenge that we have. Type 1 ambulances are truck-based ambulances. They're four-wheel drive, and again, they're capable of taking care of critical care transport. You're going to hear more about critical care transport. What I want to share with you is we're one of the few, collectively, we are one of the few services in the whole state that actually transport patients that are fully intubated patients where we have to medically sedate those patients and provide paralytics so they don't try and breathe on their own. Those kind of requirements, you need more space on the trucks, and there's no doubt about it. So that's why we have the Type 1. The building that is needed, much needed by Powell Valley Healthcare is a 5-bay steel building. It does have one internal wall. We have a drive-through bay on one side specific for testing, decontamination, as well as vaccinations. Powell Valley Healthcare has had the foresight to accumulate land just to the west of their campus. It's currently a hayfield on Grand Street, which they will be using for this garage when it's constructed. And so there is an in-kind contribution of that land to this project. And really what they're looking for is funding to get the building completed. With that, I did leave a few notes regarding the Department of Treasury website on funding. I know that there's concern among many commissioners throughout the country as to really what are the guidelines and how do we go about spending this money. I believe the proposal that Powell Valley Healthcare and Cody Regional Health has on this, it can be well supported. There's evidence of that on the Department of Treasury website for applications that have been made in other states. And we're looking for commission approval to work with your staff to help us get this funding and secure this equipment. And I'll just leave it with this. In the state of Wyoming, Park County is probably in the very best shape when it comes to EMS than any other county in the state. And I'm proud of that, but I'd like to keep it that way as well. So, any questions for Scott or myself?
Not any questions. I met with Tom and Scott and Phil the other day and discussed this. And at first blush, I said I don't want this tied to strictly we need this because of COVID, because who knows how long that's going to be around. But what they're proposing doesn't make sense to me, and that we're the way the population is growing, the way the population is aging, that it's probably a pretty good idea to move forward and with this. But so I'm just going to leave it at that. Questions for?
Yeah, I had a quick one, just a point of clarification for myself. Throughout this entire process, the rules and regulations on this, all this federal money have been a moving target. Mm-hmm. And we're still not, it hasn't held still long enough to get a good beat on it.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, this has nothing to do with the $5.4 million that the county's getting. This is a separate pool of money.
No. This is part of our what we can disperse, and we can disperse it for projects like this.
Okay, well, thanks for clearing that up.
I'm not sure how your intent was to set this up as far as adding this project to a list of what we're going to look through, or what was the plan on?
That was kind of my thoughts, is that it become part of the list. And we're going to have a discussion next week on potential projects. Are we under it? Is next week? Are we going to lose anything by having it next week? Okay, all right. So that's my intent.
Okay. And with that was, thank you, I want some clarification where we were heading with this. I don't think I need a study to tell you that we are being invaded, if you will. And I think your numbers are actually pretty low. And in the construction business and somewhat development that I see, most of them are 50 plus, 60 plus, semi-retired or retired people, and with that's going to come demand. So I'm in favor of this. I think it's a great thing. This should definitely, at the very least, be included on the list with me being gonna be gone the next meeting. I'm just showing my support today.
So what I guess we're at, go ahead, Scott.
Well, as a, part of the, baby boomers, I apologize. And plus somebody who hits his head on tree branches and stuff all the time. I certainly wouldn't want to vote against this, for my own self-interest, but, you're even looking at, like he was saying, I mean, where our EMS, best in the state, that's economic development, especially for some of the older people who want to move to the community. As far as the recovery money, maybe this, when we get our list together, maybe this could be also the first one we send in as a task to see how it all works, how quick the process is, because this seems like it'd be a slam dunker for recovery money. So maybe once we get this list together, we can at least try this out as a test to see how quick the money is and how it actually comes in.
So I'm gonna throw something out there. I'm just gonna talk to the board. We are compiling a list. Next week, we're gonna discuss it. It might, if you guys are good with it, go ahead and start the application process, knowing full well that come Wednesday, it might be, we might say yes, we might say no, but, does that work with you guys?
If I could,
Yes.
Commissioner Livingston, that would be excellent. We would like to start that process. I think something that Commissioner Teal would have fully appreciate is we do have a bid on the building. And because of changing prices, we've got 10 days on that bid. And so what I would like to do is start that application work and not force the hand of the commission, but wait till next Wednesday's meeting. And hopefully by then we'll be able to, after that meeting, it's our hope that we can go ahead and keep these numbers active and at least commit to that.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I just want to add, Mr. Chairman, Joe's absolutely right. We still don't know how often they're going to change the wording and the rules in this. So, I would be reluctant to sign any contract with builders just simply because even if we agree to put you on an application, we think we're going to get the money before we get it. Hell, they might change the rules again. We don't know. We're currently trying to figure out how we are going to do it.
We have the money.
Pardon?
We have the money.
We have.
Right, but if but we don't know 100% on the rules. We know today what we can spend it on. But tomorrow those rules could change.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that we do the work that we believe falls under the current rules, and we move forward and we do the projects. They may not review what we send in for 2 or 3 or 4 months when you're talking every county in the United States having to do this. Is there a possibility there could be an issue in the future? Absolutely, but we knew that going in.
Well, where do we stand on a possibility of a grant writer for us?
They're still talking to, WCCA is trying to work on that, and I'm waiting to hear from
And
them.
would this fall under that, or?
I don't think we need it. They've got it, they're putting it together.
Yeah.
They're doing the work. They're submitting an application based upon the guidelines to Park County. Park County is gonna say yes or no.
At this point, and I'm comfortable with that. I guess where I'm going with that is that because even if we do have groups that offer that, ultimately, we're gonna be responsible. And if we do get somebody on board, whether it's WCCA or Bighorn Basin wise or countywide, I think they need to be reviewed by our professionals.
If we can, yep. But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I'm ready, to look at these, if it comes forward and it's written on a big chief, pad, there's my age, we're probably gonna say no. I mean, I'm looking at what these guys put together. I think they're gonna come to us with a pretty damn good
Agreed.
application.
Commissioner Livingston, if I could, when you talk about 3 or 4 months down the road, if indeed the Department of Treasury comes back and questions the decisions that were made, I can commit to you now that Cody Regional Health and Powell Valley Healthcare will be beside you in justifying this expenditure. We're not going to leave you hanging.
So just a second, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, they did release the recovery and how we submit our reports. We do have to have a report on August 31st. And I strongly suggest that you ask them to put the projects together as we submit it to the Treasury Department and have the auditors look at it as well. And the money is sitting there. All we have to do is have the treasurer, county treasurer go out and pull the funds. But I would like to have all of that paperwork in place before we pull the funds and then the report's ready to go. And we'll have it before the US Treasury on August 31st, if this is what you're thinking at this point. And we can put that together. I have the whole report on how we submit our reports. So I think it's a pretty slam dunk for you guys. I don't think you're gonna have to hire Brent, but I mean, it's your discretion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. You know, when this whole thing first started, and we found out we were gonna get $4+ million, you know, one of the first questions we asked, well, we can partner with other tax supported entities. We don't know, but obviously we can now. So the only question I have when it first started, I was going like, okay, how are we gonna spend $5 million? And now with some of the people I've been talking to, there may not be enough money. You know? So things have changed a little bit. I think this is a worthwhile application, it's something we really need. You know, my tendency right now would be to say, yeah, let's go ahead and earmark that money, but I think it's premature until we get some more applications in and talk amongst ourselves and figure out how we're gonna.
Yeah, clarification, when the project's by August, you still have 2025 to spend the money, right?
2026.
26. Okay, so we still have.
And Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if you were gonna try to partner with the cities too or something. because I
That's
didn't-
still an ongoing discussion.
Okay.
You know, I
And
hope to
that's
have a lot more
something
information on the
else.
13th.
Yeah, so that's something else we can put into the report as we put in the project.
And wasn't there a number that we had as a county to go into the website and put all this money in? Does it have a specific number?
Yeah, I think there's 2.6 something sitting there right now.
Yeah.
So then in January, we'll get the other 2.6.
But I mean, as far as logging into the actual
Yeah,
website.
Bob is the only one that can do that,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Sound good?
Thank you very much. Where do we stand? We're gonna give them permission to go ahead and start.
They can start the application.
Okay.
They can start, we're just gonna have them work with Susan because she's got all the stuff. And then I would anticipate we make a decision on this one on the 13th.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything you do. Appreciate it. This is the only time I see you in uniform. All right, we're on break till 10:15, I think. Thank you.
Out where I think we're gonna move their dogs. That's still 8 acres of field. Okay, plenty of room.
Oh, man.
If you guys ran into it, I ran into it yesterday, but on SharePoint, it kicked me out like 3 different times and said you don't have permission to be in here.
Good.
I talked to Mike about it, he just said relog in, it's a problem with the internet service with everything that was happening in maybe the heat of the building, but just keep trying. He went through the file and we all still have permission.
Trying to get kicked out.
Yes, CJ, I did have to know who that about right away.
Well, I thought it was your daughter, but I wasn't sure. I rewrote the text like 3 times and I was like, I think this is your, and I was like, man, it's not his daughter. That's a really awkward text. Did you tell me who this is? I was like, you know, this wasn't my son. So he's like, here, you tell me it's your son. And I'm like, hell no.
Yeah. Not from some weird reporter. Did you get any information on the new
No, I was
service
gonna ask you. No,
that's having in Wyoming? Yeah.
I don't know, when you mentioned your source, though, I was kind of like, I wonder if, I don't know if they would be the first person to hear.
Dude, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
All right.
I don't know if that's.
I know that's what,
Good, when I told Tessa, that was the first.
this thing came in.
He said it's a group out of Montana.
I saw it on the 17th deadline, so
I don't know.
Ryan looked at it.
They're trying to come to Park County, we're all gold.
Did you tell her to tell me not much go over here for me?
There's none.
It's easy.
Yeah, well, pizza, yeah.
Commissioner Tilden, did you want to ask about the EOC room? Because I'm starting to get calls about that. About, remember we talked about basement authority using the room and then I was told by the right nobody could use the room and then I'm getting other people that want to use the room, so.
I'll ask the chairman right now. You know, the EOC always been open to the public, the pandemic hit, and we closed it down. And, Jody Thompson called me, I've got a basement authority meeting tomorrow. I said, well, since it's my meeting, basically, because I'm on the board, I told Susan to go ahead and schedule it for us to use tomorrow.
Yeah, you can.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah, you can.
So, do we want to open that up?
Well, I want to talk to Mike about, I know part of the reason too was we put so much new technology in there
Right.
that we're not wanting that,
Exactly.
people to be messing with that. So I need to visit with Mike and just see where he's at on moving forward with allowing the public back in there. And if he has concern, the main EOC is also available, Jack just says.
Okay, yeah.
But the alternate, and that's what we need, we also need to put anytime we're advertising, I think we do need to put alternate EOC.
Yeah.
The one downstairs is the alternate
Right,
EOC.
yeah.
But, what we need to do is talk to Mike and see where his comfort level is on the technology we have in there.
I have a lot of rooms that are requesting for rooms, courtrooms, judges are coming in for depositions. And so, I don't know, if you want to put like a deposit on it, I don't know.
Well, and also Mike might very easily be able to, IT may be able to just pull that, tuck that equipment away until it's needed.
Yeah.
Instead of just leaving it there.
Plug on it.
Well, I think you guys would have that discussion and I talked through the discussion.
Well,
Yeah, you know, but I thought somebody, I mean, I think it's something that we need to open up. There's always been a public.
well,
And there's a real need for it.
And there are areas and I'm getting a lot of calls now that things are opening back more.
It might have been something like that.
I should go to the biggest part of the whole station.
Mr. Chairman,
Yo,
thank you for the clarification on the main versus the alternate.
Yeah, no, Jack, I wasn't talking about your room.
Good morning. How's everybody?
good.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'll use my, Susan, I'll use my DJ voice.
Will you, or your other board voices?
I wonder why my spoken life. Can't believe I didn't hear.
Although with electronic music, do we even still have DJs?
You're probably not close
We
enough.
do, because I'm old fashioned, I listen to radio stations.
This is a radio station.
They're not as good as they used to be.
My wife has Sirius, my wife has Sirius FM in her vehicle, so I listen to classic, or seventies.
I don't know if we have an actual active DJ still with us, or if you were.
That's right, yeah, speaking into the mic.
Yeah.
You've got experience with that.
Oh, big time.
He's got a Sammy voice. To make it fast, I was so and I was just going to mention our response. And they can, you know, yes, and you'll have people here probably
Yeah, you're right.
giving their.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Good, how are you? Champion Ford?
Yeah. It should just.
Yeah, we did too.
Or something like that.
We did do it.
Stuff to do, we just take, we go, we'd sneak up. We went over to, that's a good. Well, listen, hey, we got rodeo tickets for that, like,
How was that, like, was it on the second?
On the second. A lot of years. It's not like out there. Actual, stock and test and stuff, actually. Same one. But Blake. And I mean, they have tomorrow.
I saw that. I don't know if you guys did that. I was down there, didn't think it. And they had some, I think it was bad, they had like a horse race. And they said, come out and saddle. And they would, those horses would just fuck like crazy. And once in a while, a guy would get on them, they would just take off. They buck them off and they land on fences. It was wild. Yeah, yeah.
Throw your truck keys out the window too, Joe. Send your keys out.
Yeah, I saw them out in the hall, yeah.
Okay. Well, in the words of former chairman Sheldon, it's close enough. We're gonna open up the public hearing for the Collins variance request. Dylan and I'll put your to present.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the property that we'll be talking about is in the Cody Powell Rural Planning Area. The zoning district is GRP. We did receive a variance request application from the Collinses on May 25th of this year, including payment and other information. They're seeking approval for this variance that would allow them the opportunity to go through the SUP process for a commercial event. And our understanding is some of the examples would be weddings, farmers markets, festivals, community fundraisers, and private parties. It's an existing, in greater than at least 10,000 square foot riding arena, essentially building. And what they're asking for is, in our interpretation, is to use it as a commercial business use. And approval of this variance would grant them the opportunity to apply for this special use permit, like I mentioned. So in terms of use classification, our understanding, given the building, given what they said they want to do, we classify this use, potential use, as a major commercial business, which is retail and service businesses and office uses, building sizes of more than 5,000 square feet, a floor area, or more than 1 acre of land. And just so I know, Mr. Chairman, you had a chance to read this, but we likened what we heard this proposed use to being like a convention center. However, we defined it as major commercial major commercial use. As I mentioned, this is in the GRP zoning district. Major commercial business uses are prohibited in this zoning district. We have on page 2, the purpose of the variance. It's to allow flexibility in the regulations. The applicability of a variance, obviously you, the commissioners can vary anything in our regulations. Of course, you cannot vary anything that's state statute. Should you grant this variance, you would be, providing a change, for this one case, change or regulations. The procedure for a variance is the application must be submitted to our office, explaining the reasons and manner for why the granting of the variance is needed. We have 4 criteria. You had a chance to see the applicant's response to why they met those 4 criteria. Public hearing is required, hence what we're doing today. In terms of this property, it's approximately 36.98 acres. The location of this property is about 6 miles southwest of Ralston. It's west of Highway 14A. It's just north of County Lane 16 and east of County Road 19H. And you see a picture of the property in figure 1 on page 3. Property is outlined in blue. Also in the caption to the bottom, you can see where its relative location to Ralston. Ownership, it's owned by the Collinses, James and Pamela. In terms of history, originally this property was owned by the Peters. They applied for site plan review. This was back in 2002. That was reviewed and approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So they did get a site plan review for this large structure. We're not certain why an SUP was not required. It seemed like, our understanding is, seemed like in that year an SUP should have been required. For some reason it wasn't, but site plan review was approved. Then after that, the Peters did get a building permit for this, essentially a private riding arena. Again, a large impact structure. Between August of last year and February of this year, I apologize, in the staff report I have February 2020, it should be February 21. The Collinses had several conversations with us talking about using this riding arena for events such as weddings and other events. We told them at each meeting that what we heard them saying, we would classify that as a major commercial use, and that was not allowed where they were located, not allowed in GRP. On March 26th, the Collinses came in, talked to us again about doing some things, weddings, fundraiser events, vendor shows, markets, as well as a conference and meeting space. At the time, there was some discussion about a commercial kitchen and restrooms, possibly cabins, possibly a limited number of RV camping sites. Again, what we informed them was everything we were hearing indicated that this would be major commercial use, which is not allowed where they're located. And then I did want to mention, we had this in a report, on April 19th of this year, our staff did observe an advertisement for vendors to participate in a village market and craft fair at this location. In terms of neighboring land uses, Mr. Chairman, you can see in figure 2 that this land is surrounded, one, by agricultural uses, and also there's some subdivisions to the immediate west, southwest, and south. In terms of site characteristics, this arena is on a relatively level parcel of land. There's a hayfield there. Again, this structure is at least 10,000 square feet. The applicants do have a residence that's about a little over 500 feet to the northeast of the arena. There is a driveway that accesses the resident and goes by the arena. We did publish all legal notices as required. We have those listed there. In terms of agency referrals, we have a list of agencies we contacted. We got some responses back. I'll try to be brief. Game and Fish really had no comments or any concerns. We did get a response back from Nick Hudson, the State Fire Marshal's office. His response essentially, which we shared with you, is given this would be a public building over 5,000 square feet, it would have to be reviewed by their office, is my understanding of what his email said. Public Works responded, they talked about the roads, you know, how they're rated. Essentially, they wouldn't have a issue, again, my understanding of what they said, with an increase in traffic on those roads. In terms of public comments, we did receive 3 written public comments. They were all in opposition to this, and we shared those with you, and you had a chance to read those. Mr. Chairman, you know the variance standards. I just want to read the 4 and then read you our response. I won't read what the applicant said, although we did try to summarize their response, and their entire response was in their application, which you had a chance to see. So the first variance approval standard is there are special circumstances or conditions which are peculiar to the land, building, or structure which the variance is sought, do not apply generally to land or buildings in the neighborhood, and have not resulted from any act of the applicant subsequent to the adoption of the regulations. Our response to that is there are no special circumstances or conditions which are peculiar to the land, building, or structure which the variances is sought, and do not apply generally to land, buildings in the neighborhood, and have not resulted from any act of the applicant. All lots, parcels, and property in this area are subject, obviously, to GRP zoning, which does not allow major commercial business uses. They apply equally to any land, building, or structures in this district. And I will mention, I know you had a chance to read this, but in terms of subsequent actions, you know, it's our understanding is that the applicants, when they purchased the property, which was last year, our belief is they should have known, one, that the structure was permitted as a private arena, and these commercial uses are not allowed in GRP. I know that sounds harsh, but that is the reality. The second condition with the variance is that circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application of the regulations would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. Mr. Chairman, our response is that really applying the regulations do not deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of land, building, or structures. They have a board-approved and our office-approved permit for this large impact structure, which was designed to be an indoor riding arena for personal use. That use can continue. And given that they're in GRP, as you know, there's a number of uses and buildings that would be allowed given a $50 use or building permit, or there are also some uses that are allowed provided an SUP is approved. However, this particular use is not allowed in GRP. The third condition is granting of the variance is necessary for the reasonable use thereof. Our response is again, simply granting of the variance, in our opinion, is not necessarily for the reasonable use of the land or structure, as you know, as what I just mentioned. And the fourth condition, granting of the variance is in harmony with the purposes and intent of the regulations, will not compromise the integrity of the land use plan, will not be injurious to properties in the vicinity, or detrimental to health, safety, and welfare. Our response is, our belief is granting of this variance is not in harmony with the intent of the regulations, because again, as we classify this use, it's not allowed in this zoning district. But we didn't make any comments as to, you know, is it, you know, consistent with the land use plan? But obviously, it's not consistent with our regulations. The rest of our report is conditions for variance, effective approval, expiration. We have some findings and we have one condition or one recommendation, and that is that all the conditions have not been met to grant a variance. So we recommend denial of this, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions for staff? Go ahead.
If the owner requested a special event, could they have a wedding? I mean, a limited number, could they come in and get a special event?
We
As is right now.
I guess we would have to look at what they're asking to do. We do have a special event permit.
That's what just asking.
Yeah, you know, I guess we probably have to have more details
Was that ever requested by the current owners?
Just like one specific, my understanding was it would be a number of events, maybe not every week, maybe not every weekend, but my understanding it would be a number of events over time.
Up to this point, that request has not been requested.
For one specific
Right.
wedding, not to
Or
my,
several, I don't care.
No.
They come in and ask them for a special event permit.
no, not to my knowledge.
Anything else? Atlee, go ahead.
I just wanted to add too, I think you guys all got the email this morning. We've got several emails with photos showing calendars and advertising what they want to do. And the calendar's open. They've posted several events already and apparently have several booked and plan to continue. I just wanted to add that in the record for current public comment.
Yeah, but Chairman, and I'm having a difficult time wrapping my head around all this, but anyway, in the applicant's responses to your questions, they make the argument about defining the difference between a large commercial use and minor commercial use. Could you touch on that a little bit?
So our regulations say a major commercial use is building floor area that I believe is greater than 5,000 square feet or 1 acre of land in use. And minor commercial business is less than 5,000 square feet and less than an acre being used. And so again, this structure, even if they don't use the entire thing, it's at least 10,000 square feet. And our understanding was they would always use at least 5,000 square feet of it.
So basically your interpretation is the size of the structure, even though they're saying they're only going to use, say, 4,999 feet versus the 5,000. You're saying the building is 10,000, so therefore it's classified as a major industrial use. Okay. Thank you.
The applicants are here. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you. Is there a good place that I can stand? Is right here okay?
That works fine for me.
Okay, perfect. And then anytime you cannot hear me, please let me know. My name is Lindsay Crandall. I work with Colin Simpson out of the Berg Simpson office. So I am here in his place today and he apologizes that he cannot be here. You did hear today that my clients did submit a variance request. They would like to be able to host weddings and other events at their location. There is currently a private indoor riding arena on their property. It is roughly 14,500 square feet, so it is a large structure. They would be willing, commissioners, I would like to let you know, they would be willing to remove markets and festivals from the list of activities that they would be requesting today. They would very much like to be able to host wedding receptions. They would like to be able to host community events. They would also like to be able to host law enforcement trainings there at their facility. That is important to them. These special circumstances that they are asking for today, it is a very large arena. Like Mr. Tilden did point out, it is over 10,000 square feet, which is exactly what makes it this major commercial operation. It's a very large arena on this property that when it was purchased in June of 2020, they do not need all of that large indoor riding arena to be used for agricultural purposes at this time. The proposed use would not damage or threaten any of the agricultural activities. It is a large property, about 37 acres, I believe, and they're only asking currently about this indoor private riding arena. Number two within that variance request is that strict application of the provisions would deprive the Collins of use of their property. It is, again, a very large arena. It's not all needed for that agricultural use. We need to really look at the difference of major versus minor commercial use of this property. And the difference really is, it was already pointed out, it's just the size of this property. If this building was 5,000 square feet or less, I wouldn't be standing before you today. It's strictly the size of this building that they did not even put on the property. With that minor commercial use, you can operate businesses with that special use permit. and specifically look at the different businesses that they would be allowed to use. They could get a special use permit for a bowling alley, a movie theater, a pool hall, a game arcade. Look at all those businesses. They involve so many people. The activities that they're asking to use their property for involve a very limited number of people and for a very limited amount of time and limited amount of hours. I'm also asking you to look today that our community really does need an event space such as this. Park County is changing. Their proposed use has a very small impact on the property and on the surrounding properties. And I would ask you to look at the classification of the 10,000 versus 5,000 is very arbitrary. They're not looking at the number of people that come on the property. You're purely looking at the stamp and the square footage of the building currently there. Number 3, that granting a variance is necessary for the reasonable use. I would argue again that it is very necessary for their reasonable use. This arena is very large and the size of it would fit very well for everything this community needs. We need space for people to get married. We need community events. Law enforcement needs a large area that they can train all of their people. My clients have spoken with law enforcement. A 14,000 square foot riding arena is exactly the type of indoor space that they could use for this. And number 4, that the proposed use is in harmony with the general purposes. I would ask that you could impose certain conditions on this property, such as events need to be concluded by 11 p.m., that there are noise restrictions. I grew up in Jackson, so I have seen the changing community that there. So I think I can speak very well to this. I've seen newspaper article after newspaper article that people with different venues have stood out there with noise meters. And I mentioned that to my client, but that's been a big one, that there was always, you know, how late were the events going to go? How loud were these going to go? But I have watched the community change there. I've lived here for almost 10 years, so I've also watched Park County change. I would next like to point you to the site plan approval for the large impact structure. Could I have exhibit C? I will hand you exhibit C. That would be just fine, or I don't mind. I will do my very best. Thank you. I appreciate that. Exhibit C shows the deed from the Peters. Thank you. Shows the deed from the Peters to my clients, the Collins. The next exhibit I would like to show you is the resolution 2002-45, which is that large impact structure that we were just discussing. Thank you. In the event that a variance is not granted today, I would ask that you look to this resolution that was granted, and it was granted in 2002. Specifically, I would ask that you turn to page 2 of Exhibit A. Under that, if you look in that very first paragraph that starts with whereas, it describes this impact as 14,560 square feet. When this was granted, they knew that this structure was over the 10,000 square feet. So I think that this was anticipated. I know that it was because I see it in writing and I see that it was approved. If you then go down to number 6, a special use permit will be required for any use of the facility that is not private. They anticipated that this was not always going to be used for private events. They anticipated that this was going to be used for public events, and they gave them an avenue to go forward. I would ask that this continue with the property. My clients are unclear, and they certainly don't want to go and try to harm anyone. They're looking to do this in the correct way, but they would ask, if the variance is not granted today, that this large impact structure be allowed to continue with their property. I've seen nothing that it does not continue with their property. So if it's not granted today, I would ask that this large impact structure, you confirm that they are allowed to get the special use permit whenever they would like to host a venue, be able to host a wedding, or the law enforcement training that they requested.
Along those lines, especially this just states that the special use permit is required, it's not say that it will be granted.
That's correct. That is very correct.
And this large impact structure, as it was applied for and approved, will continue with their property.
And I think that's
as a private
exactly,
or a riding arena. And it does say, yes, and Commissioner Keel kind of alluded to this earlier, that a special use permit could be applied for. It does not mean it will be granted.
and I think that's exactly what they wanted to hear and wanted to have confirmed by the commissioners today, because they certainly didn't want to assume that it went along with the property. They wanted to know for certain, and they hadn't really received an answer about that. So I do think they appreciate hearing that.
All right, well, we're running way out of time. And I know there's a lot of folks here that want to comment. I would like the board's thoughts on continuing the public hearing.
Or
Do we have time later today?
Yes.
We just won't adjourn.
Adjourn and continue at 1:15 if you'd like to.
Yeah, I'm good with it unless there's no more further comment, we can close. the public
I'm
hearing.
guessing there might be some public comment. I'm just might be going out on a limb.
Then definitely.
And I'm sure that she's, the representative's not, you're not done either.
I'm not, thank
I
you
did
for,
not think you
the
were.
assumption is correct, thank you.
But, so,
You want to continue the one with term?
yeah, so do I hear that as a motion?
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we continue this public hearing to 1:15 this afternoon.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so public hearing is continued.
So we're-
Mr. Chairman, am I allowed to ask a quick question?
Yeah, you can make it quick.
Okay, I'm at work, so I have to go back to work in Powell and I won't be able to come back at 1:15. Can I submit comments or have
Submit
somebody else
comments.
speak for me?
It's open to, if the public hearing is currently still open, so submit comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, folks. It's just a time constraint, but we want to make sure we hear from everybody that we can.
Thank you.
So next up on our agenda is.
Very poor planning.
They give me the time, I just roll with it.
But you know, the chairman, we need stuff like that.
I told her that. I just had to get my dig in.
Next up, Park County Planning Director 2, Kim Dillon, White Second Subdivision, final plat review.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicants for this proposed subdivision are the Whites. This property is in the GR5 zoning district. The planning area is the lower South Fork. We did receive the final plat application from the Whites on June 4th of this year, including payment and final plat, which you have a chance to see. That's in figures 1 and 2. The applicants request approval to create the two lots. So it's a 2-lot simple. One lot will be 14.96 acres. One lot will be just over 5 acres. And we have classified this as a simple subdivision because it is creating 2 lots from the existing parcel. As I mentioned, you saw the final plat. I apologize, just in figure 1. And in terms of site characteristics,
You got it right there.
oh, sorry, I got
you have
it.
it?
Sorry, yep, I'm sorry, I had it turned over. The location, it's approximately 6.5 miles southwest of Cody. It's just west of State Highway 291, South Fork Road. And it has address of 647 South Fork Road. As I mentioned, it is in the GR5 zoning district. The lots as proposed are consistent with that zoning district. You can see in figure 3, the neighboring land uses, mostly residential. There's subdivisions to the north, to the east, to the south, and to the west. Obviously, a number of subdivisions. In terms of site characteristics, this property has one primary residence on proposed lot one, two accessory structures. Proposed lot one also has a small wastewater system. Proposed lot two has currently one accessory housing unit, which that classification will be changed to a single-family residence or primary residence should the subdivision be approved. It also has a permitted small wastewater system. The topography you can see in figure 4, it's fairly flat. This property is not within a mile of Cody, so municipal review is not required. This is not a public hearing. We did not do, therefore, a public hearing notice. We've not received any public comments. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this on April 21st. They recommended approval. They just had those 3 conditions that you had a chance to see. The Plat Review Committee has looked at that. That occurred on June 21st. There were some corrections and changes made to the final plat. We did get a corrected version on July 1st. Of course, we shared that with you. All the submissions and final plat documentations have been submitted. This property or this subdivision does not need a subdivision improvements agreement. There's really no additional utilities or roads that have to be put in. We have a number of findings of fact, and we also have a list of recommended conditions. And we're happy to answer questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, after review, I don't see anything here, and I know we'll have discussion, so I therefore will make a motion to approve White Simple Subdivision 270 final plan review.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay,
Thank you, Commissioners.
just almost back on schedule.
4 minutes.
Is Joy nearby?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's still
Coley, can I get a number from you, please?
I've seen it, I gotta open that up.
Always a pleasure. Always one
I was on vacation for a week. I really wasn't.
39.
39, yep.
Good. Well, you didn't miss a beat for being on vacation.
No, I wasn't on vacation, that's the problem.
Oh, you needed to be. Oh.
Next up on the agenda, we're gonna have a final decision on that Fred Sarling LUC appeal. To the Park County, decision by Park County zoning director Joy Hill. She's on her way. There she is.
Yeah.
Right back, not quite on track, but. Yeah. Go ahead. You want to give us just a brief rundown? Pardon?
All right, so as you recall, I've been in discussion with Mr. Sauerwein for quite a long time. He has had a lot of questions about his property and what can be done.
Might have your mic over.
Yeah.
We got
Mr.
better?
Sauerwein is
Mr.
on.
Sauerwein.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Experiences is difficult to hear if you're not close to the mic.
So Mr. Sauerwein, of course, had questions about his property. You've already addressed the issue of the family exemption question. And now that leaves behind 3 additional questions that he had that he wanted answered. The first of those questions is, his LUC was originally conditioned that it could only be used for tourist-based businesses. He would like it to be changed to commercial retail generally, meaning that he wants anything commercial retail to be allowed and unlimited, not just a tourist-based. The second question is, he has some land that is outside of the LUC that he has acquired since from YDOT. And he would like to know if that 2.1 acres can be added into the LUC. And the third question is, if he were to subdivide the land, which he is interested in doing, he would like to know if the LUC would apply to the 3 parcels that would remain. So right now the property is like 15 acres or something of that nature. If he split it into 3 5s, he wants to know if all 3 of those 5-acre parcels would keep the LUC designation.
Joe, I've got a question for you. I've been trying to work on this and get it figured out, but I guess the way I look at this is if the LUC went away completely, Mr. Sauerwein is still, he can apply for an SUP for these uses. That it's not gonna be limited to just tourist based.
Right.
Okay. That was something I need clarification on.
And it would be the uses that are permissible under GR5.
Yes. Commissioner Tilden.
Yeah, the one thing I'm wrestling around is, in my mind, I think the LUC did expire because the building permit that he received in the storage unit does not basically comply with the original LUC. That's my feeling. However, on the building permit itself, the county did reference the LUC, and I'm wrestling with that right now. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I mean, again, we weren't here when that occurred.
Yeah.
I know that Mr. Sauerwein's LUC was very, very close to expiring.
Right.
It's my understanding the intent was to put that business in so that the LUC would not expire.
That was my understanding also, and that's what he stated when he was.
And I don't know if staff overlooked the condition. I have no idea when that was issued. I don't know if they overlooked the tourist-based condition.
Anything else?
And again, when the LUC expiration came around, Mr. Sauerwein did request an extension of that expiration date, but he did not request any other change to his SUP at that time, meaning from tourist-based condition to anything condition. The only thing that was on the table was the expiration date.
Okay. What's the pleasure? I would say that we need to have, there's 3 questions that need to be answered. I would prefer to have them in three motions.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that as to the question of removing the LUC 94 condition that the property is used for tourism-based business only, thus allowing for commercial retail uses generally, that we deny that request and leave the LUC in place as granted.
I hear a second.
Second.
Moving second, further discussion.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Well, my only question is what you brought up. I'm leaning towards the same as you, is the fact that this LUC should have expired. It didn't. Moving forward, the easiest, simplest thing is to, I don't know whether we can remove it, and if we do, then this question is not relevant.
That's some questions that are in front of us today. It's not what he's appealing.
Okay.
So I think we need to deal with what his appeal is.
Okay.
And that's basically just saying that moving forward, it's gonna stay, it will not be used for anything other than what it was originally granted for.
Okay.
So all those in favor?
Well, just one other point of clarification now, you're talking about the specific piece of property where the building is now.
What was originally approved in the LUC in 94 stays intact with the same condition.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. The next question is whether is adding adjacent lands outside of the LUC.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we do not allow the additional land. The LUC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, and talking with staff earlier, will we make these motions, so we have to spell out our reasoning?
Well, I think you are. I think we have made,
Okay.
to me, it's
I
pretty
just
clear why
want to make sure we got all our.
why we
Desire.
desire to do it. The last question is with whether if that LUC is subdivided, does each parcel then remain with, does the LUC remain with each parcel? Or does it just remain with the parcel that has the current commercial structure? Yep.
Under normal circumstances, have you ever seen an LUC that was broke up and how was that handled at that time?
You know, I probably have seen examples, both sides. The problem with this one is that this particular property was already questioned by staff previously. And staff answered in 2006 or 2009 that if the land were subdivided, the commercial designation would stay only with the portion that had the commercial structure on it, and the other land would revert to GR5. So staff already answered that question. I believe the reason behind that is because then those other lands would now be vacant, which means it wouldn't have been developed as the LUC was intended. And the thing we have to remember is when LUCs were granted way back when, they were intended to be developed based upon the proposal given to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Well, this land has not been developed per that original proposal. So those two resulting parcels would not have been developed. And I think that may have been part of the reasoning, but I can't find anything in the staff record that would indicate otherwise.
Another quick question for you, Mr. to address that. So what in the original LUC, there was a deadline. I mean, that deadline is kind of past us, but was the deadline a date or was it say 6 months or 1 year to develop?
So you mean when it was originally approved?
Yes.
So there wasn't a deadline when they were originally approved. What happened was when zoning came in 2000, the regulations drew a line in the sand and said if these LUCs are not developed by 2005, September 1st of 2005, they will expire. Because at that point, by 2000, they hadn't been developed yet. So they kind of sent a notice to all those people saying, hey, your LUC has not been developed. If it's not developed by 2005, you're reverting to normal zoning.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess, is that possible to put into this motion that the original platted land that is currently under the LUC could continue even if it's subdivided, provided it is met the conditions of the original LUC within 1 year? Is that something that's an option?
No, I'm not following.
Okay.
The LUC currently
Exists on this chunk.
Yeah.
If he subdivides it, the parcels or parcel that is not, does not have a building construction on it has to meet those LUCs within 1 year. The original condition of the LUC within 1 year, or it reverts back to GR whatever. You have 5, 7 months. You follow?
Yeah, I guess I kind of follow. I guess I don't think I want to do that, but that's.
Okay, well, that was just I didn't know if that would be an option.
It would be, I guess.
Because we're just leaving the current LUC intact as one big parcel. I don't think we should deny him the option to subdivide. What he's asking is, can the LUC continue with it? Personally, I think it's the wrong move because under GR5, he can do much more things, but that's not the request today.
That was gonna be my comment. If what is sold out, I mean, I understand leaving the LUC in place for where the building is, whatever chunk he might sell off can be under GR5 and he can come in with an SUP to do whatever that's listed approved on GR5.
I agree with you 100%, Mr. Chairman, sorry, but that doesn't seem to be the request today, so I was just trying to find somewhere in the.
Well, it kind of is.
Mr. Chair, may I interject? Again, I want to urge you to remember that the original land that the LUC was approved under was a large parcel, approximately 14 or 17 acres. And it was intended for a specific development, fuel station. There may have even been a hotel in there somewhere. None of that has happened. So now the question becomes, if you split the land, are you going to allow for all of those things to happen on each parcel that results, which will not be the same size? And they will have different access, issues potentially and water requirements, things like that. So I think that's in part why the county already answered the question as it did, because it's a different impact when now you're addressing the same kind of use on 3 independent parcels, which could now have those 3 independent separate uses perhaps. I don't know. Perhaps that's why the answer is no previously to, letting them do that. So
Mr. Chairman,
it's kind of a difficult question.
From my experience with LUCs in the past, I don't know how they ever, I do understand how they got started, but they never should have got started. And we need to do away with all of them in the county, to be honest with you. And so we've already, because of the mistake the county made years ago, we got that taken care of with the first one. The building that he built, we're saying, okay, that keeps your LUC alive for that portion of land. But if any of that land is subdivided, I do not think it should be included in the LUC. So I'd put that in a motion.
Yeah.
I would second that.
So it's been moved and seconded that the LUC, if the property is subdivided, the LUC will not go with the new parcels. It will
There you go. That's what I
only remain with the parcel that currently has the commercial storage building on it.
And just Chairman, on the side note, he can still do pretty much anything he wants to do, maybe more under the present zoning than he does.
All those in favor?
I,
Opposed, motion carries. Okay. Just a quick, just a, I guess, something to make it clear in my mind. The LUC was granted to a specific legal description. If it does subdivide, that legal description will be rewritten to what encompasses the LUC covers.
I think that would have to be a condition of the subdivision potentially, that
Right.
you would condition it that
That's
where
just,
the LEC would be.
all right, moving right along.
Thank you, Joy.
Yes, well,
Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Kim, that meeting number.
I wrote 40, 41, 52. Thank you.
Okay, we got Park County Library Director Karen Horner here to talk about changes to the grade and step wage for Park County Library personnel.
Well, we got them all today.
That's a whole team. Would.
I can give a background, get everything started, so you guys are busy. So thank the chair and commissioners for allowing me to come back. When it first came in, proposed our budget, we submitted it after before we knew the COLA and the potential 2% wage department heads, and along with the 30-step plan that the county adopted. One of the things coming in new, major issue with the library was wages and salaries. They were all over the map. There was no rhyme or reason for why these got paid. Major issue concern. So there was a consultant company already had been paid for, finished up the wage study, and it was agreed upon that our library employees should match the county employees. And so we adopted the 50-step grade and step system that you guys had. But with the changes that made, we realized there's a change in ranges of the salaries. So if we retain the 15-step, our employees would once again be way below county. So we want to adopt the 30-step plan that the county has. And we submitted kind of 3 options of what it would look like. One, if we just, kept things as they are with our current wages. And then one with just adopting the COLA, the 50 cent, and then what it would look like adopting what the county's proposed for their. And that is the one up here with Chair Stewart, and we have Chair Haynes and Chair Hill. And the kind of agreement is that we would like for our employees to have the same package like Rock. Yes, and for what we've also adopted is that we're going to do what the county's doing for their retirement of the 18 point.
Weigh in on this, Nelson?
Being at all these meetings, and we had this discussion with the library board as we got going, and I knew they had a consultant doing the work, and I kind of briefed them a little bit on, we were looking at a new grade and step scale, but the timing was just kind of goofy on what they were trying to finish up with their consultants, and the board had not agreed on what we were going to do with the grade and step scale yet, so they did adopt the old one 2 months before we adopted the new one. So it got a little bit off center there. In looking at trying to get, we've got the museum board on board now with the grade and step scale, and that should move forward fine. I think it's important that the library, being one of our entities, adopts the current grade and step scale and moves forward so that we don't have these issues every year when the county does something. We're able to look at it continual through all all of the entities that we work with salaries on. So we had the discussion about the retirement and about the grading step scale and where they would fit on here. When they first came in, they did not include, as she said, Nicola, or any steps as far as what the county had done. So that's the request today is that, number one, they've talked about adopting that new scale and then picking up the retirement change that we made. And if they join our scale, our new scale includes that 50-cent COLA. Does not have to include the two steps. That's a to everybody. But the new scale includes the 50-cent COLA.
So, Mr. Chairman, the original budget, when we met with them, did not include these. So what type is this, the increase that we're looking at? Where is the increase to that?
This is the original. This is where they sit right now.
This is where we sit right now. So what will that do to the overall budget, your budget? Will your bottom number stay the same?
Sure they do, sure they do.
Oh, I'm gonna try.
So with if we adopt the COLA and the potential two-step increase, which would be looking to your department heads, our overall budget would increase 4.7%.
Give me the number.
An actual number, what we originally asked for the total would be $1,774,540, and we're asking for $1,841,533.
Steve, help me on what's the difference.
I'm reading this right. Right now, we're at $1,687,000. If you go to COLA two-step, would be $1,696,000, so roughly 10,000 more.
10,000.
What about the COLA?
It's,
Yeah,
I
that's
think it's
it.
more.
$1,687,000, $1,696,000.
What, with just the COLA?
Just last.
So there were a couple other adjustments, if I can interject. One thing is that to keep in mind is that our first request included raises of one step on our scale, not the 50 cents. So that was slightly less than 50 cents. Like our lowest employees would have gone from 13.10 to 13.52. Your new scale puts them at 13.60. So it was actually less of a raise. We were asking for a raise,
Right,
but not, we were also asking for the full retirement. So retirement numbers went down a little, the raises went up a little, and then we also changed the wage reimbursement line on the revenues because one of our part-time assistants that works for the foundation, her wages are fully reimbursed. So we'd have more revenue if we give her the COLA. And then our Matisse assistant is also partially reimbursed wages, so that's an increase on the revenue. So that 31,000 on the page that Steve has there, he's got the thing highlighted. 31,000 is an increase in the revenue.
Awesome.
The other change on the sheet has to do with the health insurance. The change that we made in health insurance hit the 5%, and Steve had interjected that. So that is another number that's a little different than the original budget that we saw.
And our major concern, like I said, we want to definitely match the county's doing so that our employees are getting equitable pay here in the county. And a major concern issue, as I said before, was we have at least 12 employees that were making way below standard. So this giving them once
So
again.
what we're starting to drift into here is for ever since I was commissioner, the library was their own standalone entity. They were not county, they weren't running things as the county ran it. They were given a budget and said, do what you want with the budget. So what I see was starting to do is starting to drift towards this. They're becoming a county entity. And I understand where you want to do is get your employees up to, parity on wages, but at what expense? Do we then just bump your budget up, or do you work within the budget you had? It was my understanding that we would have, you have a budget of a salary budget of X amount of dollars, and that we would wind up giving you the same, the 50-cent COLA and the whatever two-step would be. But now we're starting to get into changing the step and grade, And it's just starting to get really, really muddled to me. So I need some help here.
I think part of the issue is coming in new, there was no system to how employees got paid. So for the library, I think was an issue which affected the salaries because there was huge differences between the same position, which that changed the impact every time you hire somebody new. Again, it's just constant change. I think with this long term, there's consistency, it's able to sustain a consistency of salaries. And then of course, like you would come in new, whenever you find somebody leaves, so automatically that we're going to rehire them, reevaluate positions, which I think the library's never really done in the past, is really reevaluate the position, determine if it's needed, if there's changes where you can get basically more days for your buck, to hire, one position to cover two positions in a certain way. So that's never been done in the past, and again, there's never been any system to maybe.
No, and that's what I'm saying. There wasn't this, it wasn't the county system, it was the library system. It's what they've done for years, how they operate their ship. We just gave you the money to operate your ship. And so what you're doing now, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're wanting to move towards a more county type stepping grade, but you're not wanting to make that in your budget. You want to increase your budget.
Mr. Commissioner.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Same thing.
Let me put this into perspective, having worked with the old library system of salaries and grades, which I found extremely confusing because there was really no parity. I think our employees found the same thing. And what we did when we hired a consultant was ask that consultant to give us ideas on bringing our system, making a system that made sense to the employees as well as to the director. The recommendation was that we move into the county system and use the county system rather than this kind of focus one we had. And that was what the board decided to do, not because we want to change the way we've been operating vis-a-vis the county. And that's spelled out. Followed it for years. That's good. All we're doing here is asking you to help us bring sense to our employees' grades and salaries and benefits. And that's here. And the reason that this got confused was because everything was fine when we went with your old 15 step. But then as Commissioner Underwood said, we had to then look immediately at, oh my gosh, we no longer have the same sense as we did. We can stay with this 15 step. But wouldn't it make more sense to our employees and everyone else if we just moved into the same one that has decided is better? So we'd like to be better to it, like our employees paid on our county.
And I understand that completely. I understand completely. I'm just saying, what you're asking is for us to increase your budget in order to do that instead of working within your budget.
What we would like to have a budget, or we would like you to establish our budget that we can work in this system into. So the previous budget was not approved yet. And we're just asking for an increase on the approval. If we had known when we came in the first time, we would have asked them. But we didn't.
I'm just going to clarification.
Mr. Chairman, you keep talking about benefits in the county health plan too, and the retirement system. So you're already tied into that.
Yeah, and then in the previous budget I submitted, we were paid full retirement, and now we're off. We're going to do that.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, when we received the email, I guess my biggest question is, I don't understand how it's a 23.8% increase in wages. If they could explain that, because we only gave the county 4.8, 4.97 per person. This makes it look like, I mean, I don't know how many individuals that's. Could they maybe put a little bit of salary behind it? I don't know. Steve, do you have?
They moved part-time into full-time.
Oh, okay,
So you
okay,
have 42% increase in part-time.
yeah, okay.
That's why the increase.
Okay. And
So
the last
overall,
one there?
overall, this one is only at 5%.
Yeah, the part-time work, that was a bookkeeping error, so, yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
so. It's, yeah, I need a motion. Or you don't have to make a motion, we can just.
No, I'm probably better.
Send it, you got it.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we increase the library budget to allow for the 50-cent COLA.
Well, if we have a second, then I'll.
Yeah, we need it.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, question that I have, maximum dollar amount, we're talking $83,000, right? Right.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
All right, well, yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I can't support this without knowing the dollars.
Well,
I
from
know,
this,
I'm just saying, wait,
from this right now, this is where they sit as we left it from initial conversation, 1,687,000. If they move to this, it's 1,696,000, so roughly 9,000 additional funds.
Oh, $9,000. I just thought $83,000.
Is that the COLA and the two steps, those?
No.
Yes,
Yeah.
what is?
That's
They
from
were
our
our first request.
The motion was to do the COLA.
Oh,
So you have to look at just the COLA.
so it's just the COLA and actually less, 20-some thousand less.
Than our first.
The motion on the table is to move forward with the 50-cent COLA and the inflation part of the retirement. Correct?
Another question. We got really confused there. Quite often. But in the past, when we've done things for county employees, over or something like that, we've taken that exact amount of money on a percentage basis and transferred to the library and those types of things. And I understand that's where you go.
That was my point, but that was based, that's so. Dossie's gonna have to explain this, because she explained it to me, is that would have been based on their old line item for salary.
Right, they're all.
With them moving into the new step and grade, it does increase. If we left the COLA out of it, it would increase wages. If you moved into the new step and grade, it would increase the sum. So that was kind of the thinking behind going with the 50-cent and not the additional 2-step money. Because they moved into the 2-step, the new 2-step, or the new step and grade. Yeah, I'm gonna explain that.
They placed all
Go ahead.
of their employees on the old grade step scale. And it is relatively close, depending on how the pennies break out. You could move most of them into the new grade and step scale. But our new grade and step scale is now 50 cents more because of the COLA. So in doing so, that's why I made the motion that we allow them to have the COLA. They can move their people to a grade and step similar to where they are right now, but it would include the 50 cents.
Mr. Chairman, would you consider putting a dollar cap on your motion?
Not to exceed $9,000.
That includes the 2 steps.
I'm just saying not to exceed. If it's under that, we're fine. Because he doesn't have an exact
I
number.
understand, and I like what they're trying to do, so their system is more or less like ours. It's still their call, however, I like firm numbers. I don't like leaving open off, big opening, so if you would put a cap on your motion.
You want to do go forward less.
Okay, so what would it be? He's only comes these numbers every 4 days.
And I don't think, I will interject here, I don't believe that a dollar cap is necessary because it's gonna be self-regulated. You can't go over. You already said it would be, if you go under 2-step, it would be 9,000. Yeah, with the COLA only, it's gonna be less than that. I just don't think we can plug it.
Just the COLA is 23,577.
You said originally the only increase was 9,000, 3,000 less.
That's
23,000 less with the COLA plus 2 is 30,000. I think what they did is they went back and they took out all the other adjustments they originally did. And they
Yes.
went with the COLA plus the 2 step.
So our current wages, if we live with our current and then just got, and what we requested our first time, it was a $67,000 difference. With just the COLA, it's $51,000 difference.
So it's not 9,000.
Less. So we're at, just the COLA is less than what we had first asked.
COLA's 23,000 less. And if you go with the COLA plus 2, it would be 8,968 more.
But Chairman Duffy, your motion only has to do with the COLA?
Yes.
You know, we're gonna handle the other, the separate motion or not?
No, I wasn't gonna go there. Sorry, but I was.
Okay, well, my only question is, in keeping with what we've done in the past, if we give X number of dollars to county staff, then we make that same adjustment to the library and to the floor board.
They had already done that 2 months ago. They already did some stuff.
Oh,
with
okay.
their
Yeah,
people.
I wasn't aware of that.
That was the point, that you're inclusive in that, correct?
So,
Lisa?
so is that step still in there? Or no?
I think we're not talking about the same thing. So Steve, correct me, if you're looking at the numbers of what we originally asked on June 14th, right? The June 14th number. The COLA, if we just do the COLA instead, drop our people onto a step, it's actually costs less than what we asked for on June 14th. The ask on June 14th included one of the 15 step raises for every employee and 2 steps for the 10 that are well below median midpoint.
And I've been here for like 10 years and never got any.
So if we take that all out, what's on the current wage tab is just back to 0, what people are at now. The COLA is just giving people the 50 cents.
Somewhere they're at now.
And the 2. So what we're asking from June 14th to now is only $9,000 difference. That includes the 2 steps. That if you want me to go back, I mean, Steve could probably do it on here and figure out the cost of the difference between the COLA and the 2 step.
The other
Instead
thing
of the difference between the first request.
Okay, the other thing that's confusing here is they're talking about steps that were explained to them because of the old grade scale. So when they're talking about steps. So the difference in today's budget, inclusive of the COLA and the steps, and the 2 steps, is how much different than what you requested on
$9,000, because we also increased the revenue.
So from what we approved on June 14th to what we might approve today would be $9,000, but that's inclusive of the COLA and 2 steps.
Yeah,
Value.
Chairman, I'm really confused, but I think what you're telling me is, when you said, well, they've already done the step. They did that under their
Yes.
step and grade.
Right, right.
And that money was put in there.
Right, and now they're taking it.
And now if you go to the county step and grade, then it's an additional $9,000. And I'm on board now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. Okay, that's good.
Clear. That's fine. What's that? You need to change your motion.
Yeah, from what I understand, what they just explained, yes.
Or you can amend it.
Amend it to include the 2-step value to the department chair as.
Are you? Yeah. You're agreed. Okay, now. Got it all figured out. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion.
Now, are there any other entities out here or not on our chief program?
That was the other one.
Like it's done though.
Too late.
If you
Right.
want that.
This really doesn't hold any water sometimes.
Right.
Promise will be easier next week.
Okay. All right, we're moving, we're just. Oh, the hell, here. We've got Gary Parker, County Fire Warden up here, just clarification on the resolution that on the fire ban.
Oh, you're fine. Good morning.
Good morning.
You, yeah, but Chairman, I got one quick question. How many fires did we have? Grass fires?
Yeah, on the board.
One in Cody. I think they had a couple of fires. I haven't talked to anybody in. We had one in Powell, north of Wyoming. 50% humidity we had on the board. Pretty good odds. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if you guys have the resolution, but the sixth whereas the board finds agricultural burn protection on private land with the permission of the local fire department. Problem with that is we have 4 departments and not all of them have paid employees or a farmer to call first. What's always been in the past is they call the sheriff's office. They're open 24/7 to notify that they're going to be burning and when they're done. Just a clarification that we go back to that any farmer that wants to burn will contact the sheriff's office to get the burn permit.
Still, so.
Agreed. Go ahead, I've had some calls already from agriculture, tonight. That's exactly what I told them.
Yeah.
And whether restriction or not, it's always best common courtesy to call on people for dispatch.
That's not changing.
That's not changing.
It's free, everybody should.
No, they still need to call the sheriff.
Correct.
I got a quick question. That email we got from Scott Stewart was that here?
That was wrong. That was wrong. Yeah.
That was changed.
I heard the county sheriff shouldn't try to be lawyers, but. No, it was what had happened and he pulled it up and it looked like he pulled it up, but it had not been, it had changed since that was, and it had not been updated. Nexus had not updated that. And so.
Yeah, that's 93 and it just changed.
95. Okay. So we, I got Attorney Story back there. Does this require us to make a motion to amend that resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe it does, as long as it gets publicized out there that if you're.
You still have to call the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I read that as sort of two different things, with the approval of the fire department as opposed to calling dispatch and telling them you're gonna burn. Calling dispatch, you're really not getting approval, you're just notifying them that you're gonna burn. So this language did come out of the one we did in 2016 with the approval of the local fire department. But we also had called 527-8700 to notify a dispatch or impound, I believe. So that, the only thing that was left out was those phone numbers. So
Okay.
calling.
Chairman, I have a question. Moving forward, in the resolution, it says that the commissioners may consider exemptions. Hopefully, we don't have any requests, but we're trying to clarify something moving forward. When we get a request, I know myself as one commissioner, I'm not going to approve any exemptions without, if you will, the blessing of at least the local fire district with where it lies, and or yourself as fire warden. You mentioned in the discussion that I wasn't able to attend other by Zoom that you didn't have a manpower. I assume that was based on pre-4th of July. Moving forward throughout the fall, would you consider looking into some of these exemption requests, and or otherwise, if you're not going to make a recommendation, I don't feel that.
I guess, Mr. Commissioner, it would depend on what the request was.
Understood.
Obviously, we would look at it.
Okay.
If it's somewhere other than our fire district, I would contact our fire chief and meet with him too, to get his feeling on whether whatever the event is should or shouldn't happen.
Okay. So we've taken as it comes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Awesome.
Just one question on those, if someone contacted and sent out a wedding for their child in 2 weeks and wanted an exemption and they buy a whole bunch of fireworks for that wedding. And 10 days or elapse and it gets worse, the conditions get worse, are we gonna have the ability to pull it back?
Well, and Mr. Chairman, if I could, I did actually visit with Brian on that. Any exemptions will have to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, just that in open session. We can't just decide.
Yeah.
So whether the timing will allow, it's hard to say. I mean, if it happens, if it comes in writing, you know, this Friday and we can get, you know, someone to look at it before next Tuesday, possibly, but if it happens after the third Tuesday, and they need it by that week, it probably won't happen.
Well, my point was if we approve it on a Tuesday and by Thursday, the weather conditions have changed or things are looking pretty ugly for the weekend, can we pull that approval back? That's,
Well,
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I think if you wrote it in your approval of that at an open meeting and then specifically put in there, should conditions change and probably defer to the fire warden, by that time, that exemption is hereby withdrawn and you cannot do it if the fire warden says you can't. So that's how I would handle it.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
you bet. Thank you guys.
All right. Park County Clerk, Elaine Renner, review of Park County year.
Okay, well, okay, so moving forward, we had a couple of requests. I think I sent one by email, with regards to adding, Jack Tatum's $2,000 back in. He forgot that part of that was a match in order to do the generator and you know, you guys begged him for some money, so he forgot about the match. So we went ahead and we placed that back in. And then was there any more questions moving forward from the board? I kind of requested, I haven't had a chance to visit with Pat Meyer, but I didn't know if we needed to look into the possibility of another car for the three departments to, and you also, did you guys buy a car?
No, we don't have a car anymore.
Okay, and a possibility then of you guys using it too. You know, I
None of
know
us
we
could pass
traded,
required driving.
yeah, well, we traded the large Suburban in. And so with election year next year, I'm gonna need something enclosed to take around to my trainings and things like that. Be nice to have a Suburban back, but that's an awful big expense. I think we can get one in a train if we lay it down sideways, but just a thought that we didn't think about prior. Cause you know, we thought we were gonna be way short.
Yep. Personally, I mean, I think it's a good idea. You know, I'm not sure exactly how you, go in ballpark, figure how much money you think we're talking.
I don't know, that train for for Joy's office was what, right around 40,000. Just a thought. Like I said,
Whose budget would you propose that coming from?
Pat's. Probably Pat's. Yeah.
He's not here, let's go.
He's not here, let's put it on.
Pat's on vacation, let's go for it.
But again, you know, it was just a thought. Cause we do use his vehicle once a month. He's been great about allowing us to do
Well,
that.
it's our vehicle.
Well, yeah,
It's not his.
I know, but you know what I mean. I don't know if departments have to share, but he's been very willing to share and he pays the gas for us to go back and forth to town those 2 days. And we're very appreciative because it get expensive if we
I
have to
mean,
pay
the
our
commissioner car, we used to have that little piece of whatever. You know, that basically was planted in a zoning vehicle and we used it occasionally, whatever we did. And it was convenient.
And which one was that, the big red spur?
No, yeah, that was, wasn't it?
Wine colored?
Something else, it was dangerous.
The top.
I guess where I'd like to see this, I'm not interested in putting it on this year's budget. I'd like to see it come forward as a proposal next year and put it out for bid, et cetera, et cetera. But that's where I'm at. Just to be-
you mean on 21 and 22? Or- okay. That will work.
Well, I mean, what you're wanting to do is add it to what,
Oh,
The 21, 22 budget.
Yeah.
right.
And Mr. Chairman, I understand where you're coming from. But we are gonna be putting money back in reserve this year, and next year, I don't think we will be in a position to do that. So I'm saying if it's something we need, let's go ahead and get it while we got the money.
I just look at it differently.
And in honesty, we have not visited with Pat Meyer about it, really, have we? No.
Okay.
Lloyd.
I do have a question on the final here on page 5, I believe it is, at the bottom on the bill. I'm still somewhat confused on this. The actual revenue for PIL for 20 to 21 was 1.965. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Then how does it, and then in the estimated revenue column to the side, we're showing 2.127.
That's for next year.
What
For
is
next
that the
year.
number that we're using in 21, 22? Why? Because if memory serves me right, we should be using only 1.965.
That was the previous year.
Pardon?
So what we received this year, this month for PIL was the, whatever Steve put in, the 2 point. We put that in reserves and we'll take it out for PIL next year. So it'll be guaranteed. So then we're guaranteed what we're putting in the budget for next year already. It's in reserves, we'll transfer it out. So we did that last year. So what I got last year in June, we put into reserves, pulled it out July 1st.
What we got last year in June was 1.9.
Right. So then I put it in the PIL line item July 1st. So that was guaranteed. So this year in June, I got the 2 point whatever that Steve put up there. We already put in reserves. It'll get transferred out and put into that line item for next year, guaranteed. So it's all done for next year.
Okay, I just was.
Okay, does that make sense? It is
It does,
confusing.
however, in the original motion a year ago to you transfer out of reserves was that we didn't have to know what this year's was, no matter what, because it would be 1.965996. That's what it was, and whatever we received
I
this
think
year.
that was 2
That
years
was
ago.
2 years
Right.
ago.
Okay, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Then what we received right now, just recently, the 2.127 would be for.
Next year.
Next year.
It is.
And it is
I'm
guaranteed.
not saying next, I'm talking next,
21,
when we're
22.
sitting in this room in June of next year, that's the number we'll use.
Yes,
Or June.
yes, because we already got it. It's in our bank right now. So next year,
It's so.
she'll
confusing.
figure it out.
I'm sorry.
Once we get our check in June for PILT for the 22-23 budget, will be the actual number and we'll put it in.
So we're working on actuals every year.
Yeah,
It's still
on the
kind of a guessing game, Lloyd, because in June, we're still waiting to find out what next year's budget will be. But once I get it, we know for a fact. It's just a little different on the
So
way.
is the actual revenue in this year's budget 2.1 million?
Yep,
For
we already
next-
got it.
Yeah, the budget we're working on right now. We got more than what the revenue estimated book said.
And that's why the 400 and some thousand.
Does that make sense, Lloyd?
It makes sense what you're doing, it's just not how I remember what the plan was.
So
we knew starting right now, the exact number that PIL will be next year.
And we do, yeah, right now, we know exactly what
We're
we're.
not talking next year.
Let's just say that it comes at 1.5.
No, we're not talking, okay, so
We're still gonna use 2.2?
That's how much we got.
that's how much we got.
2.1 is what we got for
Or
fiscal
2.1.
year 2021. When we receive that, we just put it in reserves, we take it out
That's what we use.
into 21, 22, so we know exactly what we.
So next year in June, if we end up at 1.5,
The next fiscal year
that will
will
be
be.
what the new number will be.
So if we,
Yeah,
if
For
we
the
budget
next fiscal
for
budget.
22, 23.
It took me a while to figure this out.
I know it's hard, you guys.
It took me a while to figure this out, but what we did, and it was something I brought up a couple years ago, was we weren't sitting and waiting at the very last minute guessing what the bill would be. And it was received, we received it in 21, but it's going, that number is going into the 21, 22 budget going forward. And so we're not spending, we're not planning on what we don't have. We got that number, it goes in there. Boom.
We
But
actually
in a sense, if it goes down, we kind of are.
No,
Well, not
because
till
that would
next
be for the
Just know
next
the
year.
next year we're really.
Then we're gonna
next
know
year.
we have to cut, yeah.
So I guess if it helps, Lloyd, if we would have, we budgeted 1.965, if we would have got 1.5, that 1.5 would be in our 21-22 budget, because we know that's what we have.
And then we would be looking to take
Yeah.
400
So by
out of
doing this, we
reserves.
know exactly what is in the bank the year before, fiscal year before we use it in the next fiscal year. So we don't over budget or under budget by the bill. We know what it is on June 27th when it comes in. Instead of waiting 11 months to find out what it really is in our budget.
That's how they used to do it.
All right.
So it looks like, I'm pretty sure I've got my head around it now. That we're-
If not, we can go down and write it down.
Well, it's,
No,
Yeah,
seriously,
and show you
sit
on
down.
paper how it works.
Yeah.
and we're actually only using it for a couple weeks. Because you. like you
It's
said,
in
it goes into-
reserve.
It's in reserve. We just put it in reserves to hold it, and then we pull it right back out of the next week to put it into actual revenue.
And we don't run into that.
Okay, don't use this anymore.
I'm gonna try. Barb, on the veterans exemption, under the actual revenues, 2021.
No.
You still show 2,556?
Yep, so we didn't get in what we expected, yeah.
Okay, and we're having to make up some because of the legislature's actions, is that my
I
understanding?
don't think that bill passed, did it?
Yeah,
It did, so we're
It
not.
wasn't a bill, it was not a bill, it was the governor's budget, so yes, it was a bill. It was the governor's budget, and the governor went to Department of Revenue and was asking for cuts. So the way the Department of Revenue met some of those cuts is they cut the veterans exemptions.
Okay.
But they didn't, we tried to get a bill that would match that to what we, as a county, have to do, that didn't go through. So
Well-
there, what it comes up to is we have to
Make the
we have
difference.
to make up the difference between what the Department of Revenue is going to reimburse and what we're going to receive.
For next year,
Yep.
not this
Yeah,
year.
it wouldn't be this year.
Starts July 1.
So, let me do some research. Well, how much time do I have?
We have till Monday night.
Okay,
Yeah, Monday night.
let me research that then.
Okay,
Because our understanding was that did not apply, so I have to do some research.
well, the money's already gone from the
For
Department of Revenue.
next year though.
All right. Anything else?
I got one other thing.
Go ahead.
Does anybody on the board want to reconsider Colleen's request for an automobile?
All right.
Well, and I guess the code will come to you.
No, I mean, if nobody wants to reconsider, I'm not gonna stupidly make a motion.
I would just say, I think they can have the conversation, and if they think it's necessary, we've got reserves and things that we can work with if they have to put a proposal together.
Okay, I'm just, my only comment is, it stands, we got the money this year, I don't think we're gonna have it next. So, anyway, I tried to.
Maybe we could ask the sheriff for an impound.
There you go.
Might need meth in the trunk, but.
Yeah, right.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good election. At least the sheriff will pull you over.
All right.
Answer everybody's questions then? I was just told that you guys had questions. So.
Till Monday.
Till Monday,
Monday night. Okay.
Monday night. All right.
And you'll make the associated changes, I'm assuming.
Hey,
I didn't catch it today. Oh,
and
yeah.
you're not supposed to grow a beard until you get back.
Gotta look the part on that.
Oh, okay.
All right. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So
Later.
Move second to go into executive session.
Is
All those in
this
favor?
my sister's?
Motion carries.
That's my stuff.
Oh, okay. I just didn't want someone to read it.